It's 7 p.m. on a Sunday. You're sitting at the kitchen table with a calculator, a pension statement open on your phone, and that number keeps blinking back at you like it's laughing in your face. £500,000. It sounds like a lot of money. It sounds like a lot until you actually start doing the real math and realize that sounding like a lot and being enough are two completely different things when it comes to retirement in the UK. Because here's what nobody tells you before you find yourself at that table, alone with that calculator. There's no such thing as having a good pension. There's only comparing one number to another number. And the difference between £500,000 and £1 million isn't double the comfort, it's double the options. And that changes completely the kind of life that's left for you after 65.
Most people think retirement is a straight line. You work, you save, and one day the number is enough or isn't enough. But the truth is different. Retirement isn't a line, it's a ceiling. And the size of that ceiling quietly decides every single day what you can and can't do, without anyone ever having to say it out loud to you. It's not about how much you have, it's about how much you can spend without being afraid. And that's where the first big difference between £500,000 and £1 million comes in. The most commonly used rule in the UK for calculating how much you can withdraw from your pension each year without risking running out of money before you run out of time is the so-called 4% rule.
Illustrative figure, worth confirming with a financial advisor before any real decision, but the general logic holds. You withdraw roughly 4% of the total each year. With £500,000, that's around £20,000 a year. With £1 million, that's £40,000. Pause on that for a second, because that number alone already tells the whole story. £20,000 a year in the UK of 2026, after energy bills, insurance, home upkeep, and a cost of living that only keeps climbing, is a life of tight calculation. £40,000 is a life of choice. Now add the government state pension, which in 2026 sits at around £11,500 a year for someone with a full contribution record. Again, illustrative. The figures change every year with the official uplift. Add that to both scenarios. Someone with £500,000 ends up close to £31,000 a year in total income. Someone with £1 million ends up close to £51,000. The gap between those two numbers isn't a bit more comfortable.
It's the difference between thinking twice before replacing the car and simply replacing the car. And here's where it gets interesting, because money isn't just about the amount that goes out each month, it's about what it protects you from feeling. Let's break this down layer by layer, because each one is a quiet mechanism nobody explains to you before you get there. The first layer is the basic cost of living. With £500,000, most of your annual income goes straight into covering the essentials: housing, bills, food, transport. What's left over is genuinely thin. With £1 million, the essentials eat up a much smaller slice of income, and what remains becomes margin. Travel, a hobby, helping a grandchild out, simply not thinking about money on a Saturday morning. The psychological catch here is that whoever has less margin lives in a permanent state of financial vigilance, even while technically having enough to get by.
And living on constant watch over your own balance, even without being in real trouble, is already a quiet form of stress most people don't even realise they're carrying. The second layer is longevity risk, and this is the scariest one of all, because nobody knows their own expiry date. The smaller your pot, the smaller your margin for error if you end up living longer than expected. Someone with £500,000 who retires at 65 and lives to 95 needs that money to stretch across 30 years. 30 years of inflation, 30 years of unexpected costs, 30 years without being able to simply work a bit more to cover the gap. Someone with £1 million has a cushion that absorbs extra years of life without it turning into a crisis. And here's the cruel part. Whoever needs the money to last the most because they have less of it is exactly the one with the least room for miscalculation.
The third layer is healthcare and elderly care, the so-called care cost, one of the most underestimated expenses in British retirement. A single year of specialist residential care in the UK can easily top £50,000. Illustrative figure, it varies a lot by region, but that's the order of magnitude. For someone with a £500,000 pension, one single year of care can eat up a huge, disproportionate slice of the whole reserve. For someone with £1 million, that same expense still stings, but it doesn't threaten the rest of the plan. It's the kind of cost that separates those planning retirement to live from those planning it to survive a health emergency.
The fourth layer, and this one's subtle, is the emotional freedom to spend without guilt. This never shows up on any spreadsheet, but it's real. Whoever lives close to the edge of their own budget carries, even without realizing it, a little voice calculating every outing, every dinner out, every grandchild's birthday present. Whoever has real breathing room simply stops hearing that voice. And that, on its own, completely changes the experience of growing older. Because the difference between £500,000 and £1 million isn't just financial, it's about how much mental space is left for you to actually enjoy the time you earned after decades of work.
Now let me show you the calculation that sums all of this up in a way that's hard to ignore. Take that £20,000 annual gap between the two scenarios, the distance between drawing from £500,000 and drawing from £1 million. That's not just £20,000 more a year. Over 20 years of retirement, that's £400,000 of accumulated difference in quality of life. Trips that happened or didn't happen, home repairs that got done or got postponed, help that could or couldn't be given to family. It's not an abstract number. It's the sum of hundreds of small can I or can't I decisions, repeated every month for 20 years straight. And here's where we need to step back from the specific example and look at a bigger truth. We spend our lives comparing our own bank statement to other people's visible lives. The neighbour who travelled, the colleague who renovated the kitchen, never actually knowing how much they really have saved or how much debt is hiding behind that appearance. But when it comes to retirement, the comparison that actually matters isn't with the neighbour, it's with your own future self. 20 years from now, asking whether today's version of you made the right calls while there was still time to fix things.
Think about Diane, 68, who retired with £480,000. The first few years were fine. The bills got paid, she could travel once a year. Nothing fancy, but a decent life. The problem didn't show up all at once. It crept in slowly, in the form of small adjustments, cancelling the second trip of the year, putting off the roof repair, thinking twice before accepting a dinner invitation. It wasn't a crisis. It was a slow squeeze, the kind nobody posts about on social media, because there's nothing dramatic about it. Just a constant discomfort, moving very slowly.
Compare that to James, who retired at 66 with just over £1 million. The difference wasn't that he lived lavishly, it was that he never had to think twice. The roof got fixed the moment it needed fixing. The trip stayed on the calendar without a second calculation. And when his grandson needed help with a deposit on a flat, James simply helped. No spreadsheet required.
Real comfort in British retirement isn't about showing off. Nobody's buying a sports car at 70. It's the opposite of that. It's the roof getting fixed at the right time. It's accepting the dinner invitation without doing mental math first. It's sleeping through the night without wondering if the pension will last until 90. No hashtag, no audience. It's the complete absence of strain. And that's exactly why almost nobody talks about it publicly. Real comfort is boring to show, and that's exactly why it's real.
So here's the lesson in 3 parts. £500,000 gives you survival with calculation. £1 million gives you life with choice. And the difference between the two was never really about the number itself. It was about how many times a week that number forces you to ask a question before you can simply live. In the end, retirement was never about the size of the number on the screen. It was about how many questions that number forces you to ask before every small decision in your life. The bigger the ceiling, the fewer the questions. And freedom, at the end of the day, is exactly that, no longer having to ask. If this video got you thinking about your own pension, hit like and subscribe. More on money and retirement in the UK coming every week.